Professor, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
First, happy Hanukkah. It's unfortunately probably not the happiest of Hanukkahs, though, with this tragic rise of anti-Semitism. I got to think that this attack in Australia might be geographically far away, but hits close to home as you kick off Hanukkah.
Well, very much so. I've spoken to the Australian Jewish community many times. I've been to Bondi Beach. I've met with the rabbi who was killed. It's very close to home, and it's very close to home because it's caused by home people. I mean, the people who are responsible for this are people like Mayor-elect Mamdani, Senator Sanders, anybody who says globalize the Intifada, who won't condemn globalize the Intifada. What we saw in Australia is globalizing the Intifada, and it's coming to a theater near you. It's going to get worse and worse and worse as more and more Democrat mainstream politicians refuse to condemn the notion that you can bring the Intifada anywhere in the world, and that the Palestinian cause somehow justifies violence no matter what degree and no matter who it's directed against. So the blame squarely lies with Americans like Senator Sanders and Mayor-elect Mondami, and also with Americans like Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes from the right, who make similar statements from a different perspective.
You've got a book, of course. I feel like it's like if it's Tuesday, it's a new, but about Jewish blood not being cheap. And
Yeah.
now it takes on particular resonance now because I can't imagine. I mean, I don't know. I grew up believing that in America that was one of our big things. You could practice your religion freely, and I live, I don't know, a couple blocks from a temple, and it's a sad state of being that when you drive by there's sheriff's cars parked out front every time the congregation meets. When you think about how you and folks celebrate your faith. Is there additional fear now about like I've got to be careful where I go?
Oh, without a doubt. Look, Mayor-elect Mamdani goes to my synagogue, Park East, the synagogue I go to and pray in, and he condemns the synagogue, saying in a sacred space like your synagogue, you can't have events that call for emigration to Israel by Jews who believe in Aliyah and immigration to Israel. It's like me going to a mosque and saying, don't go to Mecca and don't celebrate your faith. I would never dream of doing that. Yet the mayor of the city with the largest Jewish population outside of Israel in the world, a complete anti-Semite, and let nobody dispute the fact that Mayor Mamdani is an anti-Semite. He applies a double standard to Jews, to the Jewish state, and to synagogues. He would never say that about a mosque. That's one of the worst things he said, about many worse things. There's going to be more violence under Mamdani. There's going to be more violence when you get people like Senator Sanders. Here you have a senator who's Jewish on his parents' side, and from Brooklyn, New York. And he has become one of the worst senators when it comes to supporting American values, Jewish values, Israel values. Thank God for senators like Lindsey Graham and the senator from Pennsylvania and a few other non-Jewish senators who stand up for Jewish values and for Israel. But don't count on the 10 Jewish senators. Half of them don't even support Israel.
All right, guys, right now, Beam is giving my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount, 40% off. If you've been wondering how I sleep so well at night, Beam's Dream Powder is the answer. Go to shopbeam.com. Use code SPICER at checkout. Shopbeam.com/SPICER. All natural ingredients, reishi, melatonin, L-theanine, magnesium. You're going to love it. Amazing flavor. Shopbeam.com/SPICER. Use code SPICER. You know, you kind of mentioned this, but in the wake of every tragedy, politicians rush to talk about things that they're going to do. And in the case of Australia, the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, said we're going to tighten what are already really strict gun control measures. And yet avoided kind of what you seem to be leaning into, which is these people were radicalized. And that's where I think that the left refuses to address a lot of this. It's their leadership or lack thereof on this issue.
I agree completely. And I think the Prime Minister of Australia is despicable. He has tolerated anti-Semitism. He has fomented anti-Semitism. He has encouraged anti-Semitism. He has been one of the worst prime ministers when it comes to supporting Jewish values and Jewish causes. He recognized the Palestinian state without even demanding of a Palestinian state that they recognize Israel. And he did it as a reward for terrorism. What the Prime Minister of Australia basically said is, if you kill Jews, enough of them, we'll recognize a Palestinian state. We didn't recognize a Palestinian state when the Palestinians were asking for it peacefully, but when they killed 1,200 Jews and captured 250 of them, then we'll recognize a Palestinian state. What kind of a message does that send? So, Australia has a very, very significant Jewish community, the second largest community of Holocaust survivors. One of the people killed was a Holocaust survivor. Another was a 12-year-old. Another was a rabbi. And, of course, the prime minister is going to make pablum statements, as he always makes, but he's not going to do anything, and he's not done anything. And he's part of the reason that has happened in Australia, because he's part of the hate phenomenon in that country that justifies hatred.
I'll always admit my political bias, right? I'm a proud conservative. So I want to make that clear, but I feel like to some degree, a lot of the criticism on the right is about our policies towards Israel, our funding of Israel, right? Which I believe Israel is an ally that we must support. So just to be clear, but I look at the distinction between how the right and the left address this, and I want your take, because I think most of the folks on my side that have a problem with U.S. interventionism, with our support financially of Israel. The left, I think it's ideological. It's anti-Semitism straight up.
So let me be very clear. Israel does not receive financial support from the United States. Israel has a mutual relationship with the United States. Yes, it gets military loans, which must be used to buy military equipment from American companies. That's a zero-sum game in many ways. Israel used to get aid, financial aid, just plain ordinary financial aid. That stopped a long time ago. In terms of pure aid, Egypt gets much more, Jordan gets much more, Ukraine gets much more, many other countries get more. Israel is in a partnership with the United States. What Israel does for American military is helping to build the Iron Dome. It helped to build various other defense mechanisms. Israel is the best intelligence in the world, and it shares it with the United States unequivocally. So the United States and Israel are in a partnership. But let me be very clear that even if Israel got not a single penny, remember in 1967, Israel fought that war without American aid. If Israel were back in 1967, people like Fuentes and people like Tucker Carlson would be just as opposed. So for many in the right, the aid is an excuse. There's something deeper than that. I think is also, to some degree, ideological. Certainly with Fuentes, who's a Hitler supporter, there's something ideological. Tucker Carlson, very hard to understand. I think it's probably just self-serving. He found a niche. He figured out that he was losing support among many people. This was a way of gaining support. I think it was just self-serving. I'm not sure that Tucker Carlson has an ideology, but it doesn't matter. He has turned against Israel when he used to be much more supportive. But the important thing is the Republicans have marginalized and have done a much better job in marginalizing their right-wing anti-Semites than the Democrats have done. The Democrats have embraced them. The Republicans, for the most part, has marginalized them.
Yeah, that's actually, I think, well said, because I look at what these guys say during those marches on universities, the other actions they've said, and they refuse to call it out. And to your point, I got pushback when I said exactly what you did, that Mondami is an anti-Semite. People say, well, you can't say that. And I'm like, no, he is. Like, that's, yeah, I don't know why. And again, but that's the difference. There are people that will go to lengths to protect that kind of rhetoric and action on college campuses. We don't do that on the right.
No, I agree with that. And for me, the definition of anti-Semitism is very simple. If you apply an invidious double standard to things Jewish, the nation state of the Jewish people, the Jewish religion, Jewish lobby, Jewish anything, if you apply an invidious double standard because it's Jewish, that's anti-Semitism. That's simple as anything could be. And there's no doubt in my mind that Mamdani does that. No doubt in my mind that Senator Sanders does that.
I know that you've technically left the Democratic Party, but having grown up in that, I want to ask you, as we head towards 2028, you've got Josh Shapiro potentially running. He's Jewish. You've got a lot of Gavin News. How if you were just being advised on how to navigate this, because the base of their party is clearly pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas. How do the leaders of the Democratic Party navigate this?
It's going to be very, very hard. Josh Shapiro is a good candidate. He's one of many good candidates. I would never vote for a candidate just because he was Jewish. Under no circumstances, for example, would I ever vote for Sanders. I don't think I would vote for Schumer. But Josh Shapiro is a centrist. And I think if the Democrats could move toward the center with Shapiro or with somebody else who is perceived as a centrist, perceived as rejecting the AOC, Sanders, Warren wing of the Democratic Party, I think the Democrats, look, there are more Democrats than Republicans, and they have a good chance of winning, but they can blow it as they did when they nominated the last nominee. So it's up to the Democrats, and I will vote in the midterms. I will strongly support Republicans maintaining control of the House and the Senate, because the last thing in the world I ever want is AOC or Sanders or any of those people or Warren as chairman of any committees. I want to see the Republicans maintain control of the House and Senate. That's better for America. It's better for America's relationship with the world. It's better for peace. It's better for Israel. It's better for all of the values that I like.
I love that. That's, speaking of Republicans in control, they currently do control the committees, and one of them, the House Oversight Committee this week, led by James Comer, has subpoenaed Bill and Hillary Clinton to come down and talk about, you're already shaking your head, so this is going to be good. This is where I get my class for free. They've asked Bill and Hillary Clinton to come testify under subpoena. And from the reporting, they're saying, hey, we'll do a sworn statement or something, but we're not coming. So I want you to start with, just put your political hat, not your legal genius hat on. Politically, where do you think this ends? And then back me into the legal. Do they have to?
Well, you're right to distinguish the legal. Technically, legally, of course, if you get a subpoena, you could be the former president, you could be the Pope. If you're in America, you have to comply with an American subpoena. But politically and morally, they shouldn't comply with the subpoena, because that's not the way any former president, former attorney general, former secretary of state has ever been treated. There is no reason why they can't simply give a sworn statement. If the sworn statement is unsatisfactory, then maybe they can be subpoenaed to answer questions that they didn't satisfactorily answer. But their lawyer, David Kendall, wrote 3 letters, and Kendall's a very, very strong lawyer. I've worked with him. After all, I did help defend President Trump. Not only President Trump, but President Clinton as well in his impeachment. So I'm nonpartisan when it comes to impeachment or these legal issues. But Bill Clinton knew Jeffrey Epstein. Of course he did. I was at a dinner at Caroline Kennedy's house when President Clinton was president. And while we were at the dinner, the President Clinton got a call. And he walked away for a few minutes. And then he came back and said, there's a guy on the phone who wants to say hello. And he has to be the phone. It's Jeffrey Epstein. So President Clinton did speak to Jeffrey Epstein. I am an eyewitness, an ear witness. I know that. So did I. But I don't think he did anything wrong. He was never on the island. He went on his plane numerous times for charitable purposes. So did many other people. But he has something to answer to, and he should answer. But I don't think the spectacle of having him challenged by senators and congressmen in front of a TV audience is anything but a political ploy. So I'm on the side of the Clintons on this one. I hope they are not called, and I hope that the same standard applies to them as has applied to other former presidents. The last time a former president was called, I think it was to commemorate the 200th anniversary of the Constitution of the United States. That was President Ford back in, when you were in high school.
But let's go back into the legal, because to your point, it's a valid subpoena. Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro went to jail for not fully complying with subpoenas. Now, I get the political piece of this, but let's go back to sort of the legal piece. If they don't come to terms, I've seen this movie, and the movie goes like this. Comer says, they reject the subpoena. Comer sends it to DOJ, and Pam Bondi goes after them. I mean, That's where I find this whole thing intriguing, because if I had knowing what happened to Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, I, admittedly this might be a bit of a revenge tour, but who cares? It's still legally they have to answer to this, right?
Well, they have to answer to it if a judge makes them answer to it. Remember that regardless of what Pam Bondi does, and Pam Bondi is a very fair person, and I think wants to conduct the Justice Department in a fair manner, and she'll realize that some Republicans who got subpoenas for January 6th didn't comply with them either, and they were not subject to Justice Department. But even if the Justice Department does go forward, a judge has to validate it, and the judge has to be a DC judge. And that's
Oh,
not.
really? Wait. So that's a key point. So it has to be if they challenge it, the
Yeah.
Clintons say we're not doing this, then it has to go to a DC judge.
Well, it has to go to a judge, and the judge can be picked by the Clinton lawyers to bring an action against enforcing the subpoena. And David Kendall, who's a DC lawyer in a big law firm in DC, will pick a DC judge, and then the case will go to the DC Court of Appeals and the United States Supreme Court. And so there's a long way between getting a subpoena and putting the former president of the United States, who's now not a young man, in prison. So you want my prediction? Bill Clinton's not going to prison. Neither is.
But okay, so just to the cynical, non-legally background educated person, how do I look at this and say, why is it fair that Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro ended up going to prison for defying it, and why them?
No, two wrongs don't make a right. It isn't fair. Bannon should not have gone to jail. I was on his side on that one. I am absolutely neutral when it comes to this. I don't want anybody to go to jail when the subpoenas are being issued for pure partisan political purposes. And I think courts have the right to make that determination. Generally, subpoenas have to be enforced, but there has to be good cause. And courts are what stands between the politicization and injustice. Now, courts can become very political as well, particularly in the District of Columbia. So we're going to see a clash of politics.
So what else? Everybody's gotten all wound up about the Justice Department releasing information. You and I have spoken extensively about this in the past. What should be the expectation about what information is coming out? I know the court last week said that a grand jury information can now be released as well. I mean, what should our level of expectation be about what else is coming out regarding Jeffrey Epstein?
Let me tell you what must come out. What must come out, what's not going to come out, because nobody, neither Democrats or Republicans, have the guts to ask for it to come out. What hasn't come out and what will not come out is material that shows that many of the women who collected money from Epstein never met Epstein, committed perjury, lied under oath, accused people falsely. What we're hearing from everybody on both sides is, of course, protect the victims, protect the survivors. But are they victims? Are they survivors? Is Sarah Ransom a victim when she accused Bill Clinton, when she accused Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, and Richard Branson, and then admitted that she made up the whole story? Are the Farmer sisters victims when we know that they alleged that Jews are pedophiles? There are people out there whose credibility has been torn to shreds, and yet they're being protected. So what I've said from day one is I want everything out there, nothing redacted. When you make an accusation against somebody, you waive your right to privacy. So I would like to see everything out there. What we've seen so far is selective leaks. Right now, the Democrats are engaged in selectively leaking. They decided what should go out. That should never be the situation. I can tell you, by the way, the people who are keeping most things secret are judges. The judges in the Maxwell case, the judges in my case, when I was accused falsely, and the woman ultimately had to admit that she may have mistaken me for somebody else and dropped all the charges. There are still sealed depositions there. There are still sealed depositions that demonstrate perjury. And that's what I think has to come out as well. Otherwise, it's McCarthyism. When you hear senators and congressmen saying, we're going to read a list, I have a list of names. Remember who last went in front of the Senate and said, I have a list? It was Joe McCarthy. And when you have senators and congressmen saying, we have a list, I know who's on the list. I've seen the list. Ehud Barak is on the list. Senator Mitchell is on the list. Bill Richardson is on the list. The granddaughter of Jacques Cousteau is on the list. These are people who have been accused, many of them falsely. So the idea of producing a list without saying that this list was produced by people who have a credibility issue, who have accused people like Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump of having a videotape. This woman, Sarah Ransom, swore under oath things about me and about other people, and then had to admit that everything she said was made up. So we have to hear all sides of the story. Otherwise, we're involved in the new Epstein McCarthyism.
Right, but that being said, the question is, you alluded to this. The Democrats put out these pictures, like 4 instances of Trump. One of them was a picture, by the way, that was a public picture in the public domain, and they blacked out the women's faces as if they were looking like they were protecting them, when the picture itself was already in the public domain.
With me, there's the picture of me with Jeffrey Epstein, him wearing a Harvard shirt. That's on Getty Images. For $15, you can buy that picture. It's been out for years and years and years. I was at a seminar with prominent Nobel Prize winners, and there was a picture of me and Epstein, him wearing a Harvard shirt. And that's produced as if, oh my God, Dershowitz actually has a picture with Epstein. Of course, I was his lawyer. Of course, I have a picture with him. I have a picture with all my clients. You want a picture of me with Mike Tyson? I'll give you that. You want a picture of me with Klaus von Bülow, O.J. Simpson? Hey, it's all over the internet. Yes, I have a picture with Jeffrey Epstein.
But what? So this is what is amazing to somebody like me. You get sold a bill of goods, and all this information's coming out. Democrats selectively leak a bunch of pictures of Trump, and yet here we are. Almost a month. The end of this week will be a month when we're supposed to have all the information released by DOJ, and yet that's why I started off the conversation the way I did. I don't feel like we know anything more, and frankly, this to me is like Geraldo opening the safe. I feel like people, if you don't get that reference, Google it. But I feel like we expected all of these names to come out in these lists of all these people, and we know nothing more really than we did 20-something days ago.
It's much worse than Geraldo finding Al Capone's safe, because nobody was hurt with that. Here we have people being accused by non-credible sources and McCarthyism. If you have a picture with Epstein, you must be guilty. If you knew Epstein, you must be guilty. If you went to a meeting back in 1930 with a socialist, you must be a communist. It's McCarthyism. And people love McCarthyism. Today, the McCarthyism is coming as much from the left as from the right. And Epstein is the source of it. I have to tell you, the Epstein story has been way, way, way blown out of proportion. There was a congressman the other day who said that this is the worst sex scandal in the history of the world. Really? Compared to the Catholic Church scandal, which involved hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of young boys. The church, of course, did a great job in cleaning it up and making it right. But there have been so many other scandals. In the Epstein scandal, there's one person who said she was trafficked. Everybody else just said they had sex with Epstein. The idea that this is a massive trafficking scheme is an exaggeration created by the media. It's bad enough. It's very bad. What Epstein did is very, very bad. But it's not the worst sex scandal in the history of the world. It's not even close.
Last question on this subject. When all of this came out for a while, there was this vision, as you kind of alluded to, of a bunch of high-profile people's names that have been held back and that were going to get destroyed if this all came out. So we're now a couple days away from the 30-day deadline. Still, to your point, the names we know, the Senator Mitchells and Bill Clintons and whatever, we've always known. Are we ever going to know anything more about the list? I know what you want to see happen, but just the legal reality of how this plays out. Is there going to be more names that come out that shock the system?
No, I know a few more names that might come out, but they're people who are obscure, people who nobody knows about, and they may be innocent, but they were named by people I know because I've seen the FBI, the redacted FBI report, and I could construct from the redacted FBI report and her previous book and other material who the people were who are accused, and they may all be innocent, but we're not going to see any prominent names of people that we haven't heard before. I don't think. Noam Chomsky, his name is on the list. He spent a lot of time with Epstein for years after it was known that he had committed serious crimes. But his name somehow hasn't come out by the Democrats because he's a Democrat. And so we may see a few other names like that, but nothing earth-shaking, I don't believe.
And just conclusively, can we say that everything that we've seen about President Trump is it final? There's no, I mean, like, they've tried everything. I don't see anything more coming out.
On President Trump, and even the accusers have said that. Virginia Giuffre, who falsely accused me, said that there was no indication that Donald Trump did anything wrong, and I think the same thing is true of other accusers. So I don't think there's any possibility that anything more will come out about Donald Trump or about Bill Clinton. I think you will see a few names of people that are probably fairly obscure that have never been revealed up to now, and some of them may be innocent.
It's funny to me that we're at a position where after all this hype, I mean, like I said, our side believes that there's going to be a bunch of high finance CEO types and Democratic donors, Hollywood executives, and it just seems like it's going to be a big nothing burger.
I think that's right. Remember, Epstein did travel around the world in his plane with some Democrats in order to raise money for the Clinton Foundation and other healthcare things. But I don't think there was any hanky-panky during those trips. And I doubt we're going to see anything that, but everything's a headline these days. I mean, pictures come out. That's a headline. But, they were showing pictures of his bathroom. And as if that's relevant to anything. So if you're interested in scandal and gossip, probably turn elsewhere. I don't think you're going to get much.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.